Hi there. The discourse that I'm going to do now is one on the spiritual attribute of conscience. Now that's spelt Conscience, conscience. So your conscience, that little angel that taps you on the shoulder and says, "Oh, you've done the wrong thing. Don't be naughty." You know, they see it in the cartoon representations of it. So don't mix up conscience, your conscience, with your consciousness, which is I'm conscious. You can see that I'm conscious. I'm awake. I'm talking to you. I'm not unconscious. We have a subconscious. You've heard of the subconscious, where often things are buried there and they can come out and affect us in ways. So yeah, don't confuse elements of consciousness with the spiritual attribute of conscience. So it's very hard when speaking it. It sounds very similar, and I have noted that over the years of people mistaking it when I speak of it. So I wanted to get that clear right at the start. So, okay, this spiritual attribute of conscience. We have people say, people who do bad things all the time and they're not sorry about it, because it's your conscience that kind of eats at you, makes you feel guilty and makes you feel sorry, because what you've done has gone against one of the rules of your being, because that's how your conscience works. It operates according to the rules of your being that you have set up. So if you've got a rule that says it's wrong to do something and then you do that thing, your conscience is going to bother you. It's going to prick you. And until you've owned up about it or compensated for it or somehow worked through it, it's going to bother you. It's not going to let you go. So the conscience is like a faculty. It's a connection between our higher self, our soul, and our brain functioning, our actual consciousness in the physical. Okay, so it is linked there. So yeah, somebody who's done something really wrong and it not sorry, doesn't think they've done anything wrong, you say, oh, that person hasn't got a conscience. Well, they certainly haven't got one that's functioning, or at least not functioning in the way we think it should. It could be simply they do have a conscience, but the rules that they've set up for their being, their rules of being, are that whatever they did, regardless of what society thinks, according to them, they've done nothing wrong. So if they've done nothing wrong according to the rules of their being, well, their conscience isn't going to come in and remind them, is it? So they may very well have a conscience. It's just that it's operating under a totally different set of rules as to what is accepted by the majority of humanity. Okay? So we're interested, though, in our own personal conscience. So this is your conscience. So it's not an attribute you have to acquire. You've got one, right? What you need to do is learn how to use it. Okay, it works automatically. Okay, so, but you can use it when you look at it in the context that it is operating according to the rules of your being. Now, what are these rules of your being? When we come in as babies, we really don't have any as such. We've got basic instincts and things like that, but we've not operating with a sense of right or wrong. We're just too new to another physical life, and we haven't brought back at this point things that we've learned in, or rules of our being that we've developed in other lives. So while we are very little, we're very influenced by our parents and the rules that they set. So often the rules that they operate under, so your parents' rules of their beings, are what they transfer to you. They give you those rules initially for you to operate under. And usually, I say usually, I'm sure there's always exceptions, you will accept them and you will operate under them. So if you break one of those rules, so you've been naughty, often your conscience will niggle at you because maybe you've hidden it, and you don't want to be found out. But then sometimes your conscience gets the better of you and you go to mum or dad and you just tell them what naughty thing you've done. I'm sure those of you who can remember back to their childhood, some can remember further back than others. I'm sure that you can remember a time in your life when something like this has happened, when your conscience has bothered you to the point where you've actually gone and owned up to something. Okay, now also you may find that you're carrying guilt from things you've done in the past because you did things that went against the rules of your being and your conscience is not letting you rest. Maybe you get long periods of where you don't think about it, then something will trigger it and bang, it's there. And it can have impacts on your relationships and the way you live your life. Okay, now it could well be that what you did do was, as far as how you are now, the person you are now, you might look at that and think, yep, I still agree that what I did was wrong. Okay, fine. Because you are in charge of the rules of your being. But if you look at some of those rules that you grew up with, and there's something about you now that is challenging them, and that's most likely because you're now, and you probably would have happened in early adulthood, really. So depending on how old you are at listening to this as to what part of time in your life we're going back to now, but it can still be happening later on in life too. Because we don't always remember or bring through the stuff from past lives in childhood, early adulthood. Some do in a life, some don't, because it comes back when we need it the most with whatever we've taken on in our life, whatever challenges, whatever learning experiences we're undertaking. Okay, so sometimes we need to remember stuff learned from past lives so that we challenge things earlier, or we need those abilities to meet certain challenges going on, or it happens later in life that we start to have these things filter through, that we might live with certain rules of our being for a very long time and thus have certain experiences within the framework of those rules, and then it could be like in the middle age that suddenly things are filtering through. Maybe you're coming in contact with some information or something, and it's triggered a connection to rules of your being that you had in a past life that have been overshadowed up until now, and so you're starting to question those rules that you had, and maybe you're starting to create new rules. And it may not be that you've got bringing these rules from a past life. These may be new in this life. You've come across something that you're really drawn to and you really believe in, but it's in conflict with what you grew up with a belief system you grew up with. So now this is the first life you've come in contact with this new belief system and it's challenging you. Okay, so in those cases, often there can be times where the conscience operating under the old rules is really making you feel guilty about exploring these new things, about changing the way you react to things or behave towards things. So that can be quite a confusing time, and you can probably relate to that. You've probably been through that. Okay, so, and that's what's happening. Okay, you've got a certain set of rules that you have worked with. Sometimes you've not obeyed them and your conscience has pricked you. Maybe you were somebody that obeyed them rigidly and didn't have a conscience problem, as in it bothering you. But the thing is that mechanism is there, and so you can use it. So if you want to change your behaviour, you can set new rules for your being as well. Because if you've behaved a certain way, you've got certain bad habits. I won't give examples, but you've realised these habits are bad habits for me. Maybe somebody else could have this habit and it doesn't hurt them. But for me, I consider this is a habit I don't want anymore. I really don't want it. Well, that habit has actually made its way into being one of the rules of your being. And that's why you have the habit, you just keep doing it and nothing's coming to remind you that you shouldn't do it. Well, if you consciously look at that and consciously in deep contemplation or meditation, look at that and say, okay, I'm making a new rule for my being. That particular way of thinking, doing, acting, whatever it is no longer one of my rules. I'm letting it go. I'm erasing it. You may have to use some form of imagery or symbology or something in order to reinforce that. Everybody does things differently, so I can't give a technique just here because what will work for one person might not work for another. But the idea is that you need to find one way of identifying that you have a rule there that your conscience is accepting as something that it's got to work to protect and make sure you follow it. You want that gone. Then you have to be very clear that that is no longer valid, that your conscience is no longer has to pick up on it and tell you it's wrong, or you might be replacing it with something else. That might be the easier way to do it. You might be adding a new rule. You might not be getting rid of something, but you're adding a new one because you want your conscience to remind you when you are not doing it. You want to, it can be even, we'll use the example of your ego perhaps. Perhaps you've realised that, oh, I hadn't realised this, but I'm actually a little bit arrogant. It's not too bad, I don't think, but, you know, I now know why certain people act the way they do around me and why I heard that conversation that I wasn't supposed to hear. And I had no idea that I'm coming across as a bit, you know, full of myself or a bit arrogant. I don't like that. I don't want to be that. I sincerely don't want to be that person. So I want to be reminded whenever I'm doing or saying certain things. You may be able to be general about it and it'll work, or you may have to be more specific. Sometimes a little bit of trial and error is needed with this, but it's a matter of being very clear that that is not acceptable to me. It's not somebody else's judgment. Okay, it's not operating under somebody else's rules. I've identified, this is not acceptable for behaviour for me. Totally unacceptable behaviour for me. So I want to be reminded in a big way when I slip up. When I fall into doing that, that is wrong. It is against my rules. I want my conscience to kick in and to remind me very loudly and very insistently about what I'm doing so that I can stop it straight away. Okay, so that's it simply. That's the principle of how to get your conscience to work for you, to help you to grow and evolve into the person that you want to be. Okay? So it can help with a lot of things that you may identify with yourself that you're carrying from childhood. You may now be able to look back and say, where's that coming from? And you say, oh, it was drummed into me, blah, blah, blah. Actually, no, I don't agree with that. I didn't think about it back then. The person who told me or whatever, I trusted them, so I took it on board. But yeah, I still love them and all of that and trust them, but well, that might work all right for them, but it's actually not me. I can't have that anymore. You know, so that's your first step in letting go of any guilt that goes with that you might still be carrying because you've been finding that you haven't been able to keep that rule. You're always in trouble with that particular thing. And when you look at it, you think, well, I'm not in trouble at all. I'm not hurting myself. I'm not hurting anyone else. It feels fine to me. I really do not see anything wrong with that. So therefore that's got to go, and I'm replacing it with something else. If you feel you need to remove something and replace it with something that's more suitable to you now. So there's probably a bit of all of that in it. You replace it with things with something else, or you just totally remove them sometimes. That's an individual journey. So I would hope that now that you have this information about your conscience, and how it works, and the fact that you do have rules for your being that you can rewrite or modify, add to, you can edit them, okay, then that's pretty powerful information to have. You're not going to get miraculous results most likely straight away. It takes time. So persevere. Don't give up. Once you've started readjusting the rules of your being and getting your conscience to operate under them, after a while, you'll find so much is happening automatically according to your new rules. And conscience doesn't need to kick in to remind you of anything, because it's now, you have some new habits, some new ways of being, and as long as you're operating according to them, conscience won't bother you. And disobeying some of the old rules that you've gotten rid of, conscience isn't going to bother you either, because those rules aren't there anymore. So you might not really have much interaction with the functioning of your conscience, but it's still there, healthy and doing its job. Okay, so I'll leave you with that, and thank you for taking the time to listen to these videos.